Welcome to the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me podcast, a podcast designed to help you increase your influence, develop your leadership, and maximize your results.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. Today, we are talking about Chapter 11 of Leadership Gems for Women. Be intentional. And if you've known me for very long, you've been following me for any length of time, you probably know I geek out over this concept, being intentional. I love what Richie Norton had to say. He said, intentional living is the art of making our own choices before others' choices make us. Because no great accomplishment, no great achievement happens by accident. Great cathedrals aren't built in a day. Great companies don't just happen, and no one becomes very successful by mistake. And major accomplishments come about through dedicated, focused, intentional work towards a goal. Hard work, and lots of it. And when we think about being intentional, we have to think about bringing the leveraging, maybe leveraging is a better word, leveraging the power of being intentional with our time, our energy, our talents. Because just like the quote that I just shared with you, right? We want to make our choices before other people do. And if we're not intentional, then other people will simply take control of your time, of your calendar, of your schedule, of your energy. You have to be intentional about using them in the way that fits what you want to do, what you want to achieve. Um it's so easy to just drift, and I think far too many people are just drifting. And maybe they're not drifting through all dimensions of life, but I think most of us struggle with drifting in at least one area of life. And interestingly enough, when you meet somebody who is a high achiever, a lot of times they are very high achievers in one area, one dimension of life, but maybe they're completely drifting in another area of life. Now, that's not always the way it is. Sometimes you meet somebody who is, firing on all cylinders in all areas of their life, and they are checking all the boxes and dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's and just hitting all of their goals in all areas of life. But a lot of times when I meet someone who's been very successful at building a business, for example, they have not been successful at keeping their health in check or being intentional with their relationship with their spouse, for example. And so, just like we are um, balanced and in harmony when all of our dimensions are thriving, much like a wheel, right? A wheel doesn't roll if it's not well balanced and well rounded. And absolutely, there are seasons of life where we get out of balance for a short time, and maybe we're still in harmony with our overall goal and direction, but we have to be intentional about bringing that balance back to our life, being intentional with every dimension of our life if we want to be successful long term holistically, right? Our whole person. To be successful in our relationships, we have to be intentional about them so that we don't neglect them. To be intentional in our career so that we can be successful, we have to be intentional about health. And all of these things when added together can add up to personal and professional success, but it's going to require intentionality. So there are four key areas in which you must be intentional if you want to increase your influence as a leader and become more successful. Number one, you have to be intentional about adding value to yourself. You have to be intentional about developing yourself so that you can continue to grow. Consider the books that you read, the people that you allow to give you advice, the influences that you allow into your mind, and even the people that you're spending your free time with. Are those things helping you grow? Are they adding value to you as a person, as a leader? because you can't give someone what you don't have. And so you have to be intentional about adding value to yourself to become more valuable, because that's going to increase your influence, but it's not going to happen by mistake. Nobody becomes more influential by accident. It requires being intentional. And, one of the things that I've talked about before is the power of a morning routine and being intentional with the first few minutes of your day. And I say it and I say it, and it's just so incredible. It's just so powerful to be able to spend the first few minutes of your day setting your intentions for the rest of the day. That's why I created my motivational planning journals series. And it's really just a very simple template that walks you through a pretty quick, very simple morning routine that allows you to be intentional with your day and each area of life. So there's just a little section with being intentional for gratitude. What am I grateful for today? There's a section for being intentional with my physical health. What is the thing I'm going to do that's going to, help me be healthier? And a section to be intentional with relationships, a section to be intentional with action steps for the day, a section to be intentional for that. And so, it takes 5 minutes, if that. It takes 5 minutes. It is just as simple and effective. In fact, you can certainly find the journals. They're on Amazon, or you can find them on the website, of course, riastory.com/journals. But you can also, I did a podcast on the routine itself. So you don't even have to go buy one of the journals. You can just start implementing the routine yourself, if you choose to do that, right? Just be intentional about it. And if that interests you, I did a whole podcast detailing that very simple, quick, efficient morning routine. That was episode 100. So it has been several podcast episodes back a couple of seasons ago, but go back and listen to that podcast episode. Just leveraging the power of being intentional with the first few minutes of your day, because that allows you to become more effective in all areas of your day. Number 2, be intentional about adding value to others, right? Volunteer to help someone, be the first person to help, because that's an opportunity to build your influence. Now, I've said this before, be intentional about volunteering to help in your lane, um, in your gifted zone, in alignment with your purpose. I do some volunteering with teaching on mindset and self-worth and self-confidence and goal achievement. And, I do some volunteer work teaching on sessions like that. And that's how I choose to volunteer my time, because I'm not going to volunteer my time to do a food drive, for example. There's nothing wrong with a food drive. Food drives are great things that can help food pantries and community food banks, get some food and some resources for the people in the community that need that. That is not a bad thing, but it's not the best use of my time to get out and go try to organize a food drive. It's just not. Number one, I'm not any good at it. Number two, if I spent 10 hours a week doing that, that's 10 hours a week I'm not spending toward dedicating or volunteering to help a group of survivors of human trafficking overcome and become more resilient, right? So, very important to say, when you're intentional about adding value to others, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing a favor for somebody, but the more you can be intentional about adding value to others in your strength zone in alignment to your purpose, the better off you'll be. And probably there is somebody else who's better equipped to do that other task anyway. There are people who are far better at fundraising and food bank drives than I am. And so I need to not take that opportunity from them, but make sure that I focus in my lane as much as possible. Now, I love Zig Ziglar's quote on this. He says, "You can have everything in life you want if you will just help other people get what they want." Very, very powerful quote. Number 3, be intentional about saying yes to what's truly important to you. Fill your calendar, schedule your life best based on your priorities. Asking yourself what you need to do in order to develop and enhance those skills, those priorities, those opportunities, and say yes to those things. And that's where you need to focus on saying your yes. based on your priorities. If your priority is to become a better team leader for your team, then say yes to the opportunities that are going to help you grow in that area. What you say yes to defines your life. And then last but not least, number 4, be intentional about saying no. Because if what you say yes to defines your life, what you say no to will define your legacy. You cannot do everything. You cannot be everything to everyone. And once you've determined what you need to say yes to, then you need to say no to everything else. And I know that's much, much easier said than done. But um, it's so critical because you can't say yes to everything. You have to say no to something. Make sure you're saying no to the right things. Saying yes to everything will derail your leadership. Saying yes to everything will derail your life. Saying no will create this space for you to say yes, but you have to be intentional about that. I may have shared before, I used to struggle with this more than I do now. I used to just be terrible at telling people no. Somebody would ask me to do something, and so I'd say yes. And somebody would say, "Oh, can you help me with this?" And I'd say yes. And these days, I'm much, much more intentional with my time, but I'm getting better results because of it. I'm much more intentional about conversations with people. Early on when I really became active with LinkedIn, I mean, there are so many people out there who are just like, oh, let's have a virtual cup of coffee. And in the beginning, I would say yes to all of them. I'm like, oh, well, this is networking, right? Wrong. That is not networking, not effective networking anyway. Um, because what I've learned is number one, I don't have time to talk to everybody who just wants to talk about nothing or just wants to sell me something or just wants me to buy their newest book or something like that. I'm absolutely interested in connecting with people if I can add value to them in my lane, if I can help them in my lane or perhaps mentor them. That's absolutely intentional and something that I make myself available for those people who are intentional with their time. But if you're not the person who values your time, you're certainly not going to value mine. And I don't have time to talk to everyone who just wants to give me a sales pitch about their new coaching program. And so what I learned to be intentional about is accepting those opportunities to have a Zoom or a phone call, not because I'm not, don't want them to be successful, but if I'm not interested in buying the thing or enrolling in the thing that they have, why would I want to spend an hour learning about it if it's not a good use of my time and not a good use of their time? In fact, it's even almost a disservice to them because they need to be freed up to go find somebody who is interested because I am not interested and you're not going to move forward in life by spending time focusing on the things that aren't moving you forward. So I had to be intentional about that. And these days, someone says, hey, let's jump on the phone. I absolutely feel more empowered to say, what would be the purpose of the call? And, if you're a very intentional, purpose driven person, you won't mind outlining the purpose of the call. In fact, you probably did that before you asked for the call to begin with. And if you're the level of person who is intentional with your time and energy, you'll steward it well. And those are the people who I'm interested in having those conversations with. But I have to be intentional that there's a reason for the call because I don't have time these days. And I've got 34,000 followers on LinkedIn. I can't sit around and have just virtual coffee with every one of them. They're just not enough years in the life, right? And so I've realized that saying no to the things that can pull my time and energy away from my focus allows me to say yes to the things that are more important in alignment with my priorities. And only you can decide what that is for you, but be intentional about having those thoughts. That's all I'm encouraging you to do. I'm not telling you how you spend your time is wrong or not the best use of your time. You get to decide that. But I am asking you to be intentional about deciding that because then you can be more effective about living it out day to day. Until next time.